Hi there and welcome to My Week. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us. What a week it's been. We all watched the violence in Charlottesville this weekend, the president's response. There have been protests around the country and here in Michigan. We've had debates with each other on social media about why the anger still exists, why labeling hate, bigotry, white supremacy, and neo-Nazis matters. And while we have a full show for you tonight, we'll get into some conversation about Detroit schools attracting teachers. You'll hear from Congressman John Dingell about what he views as one of his biggest accomplishments. We are going to start with what everyone is talking about. Let's bring in Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you, and especially, I think, on a week like this, to put, I think, a lot of things in perspective. I had planned on talking about, and you wrote a column this week, Stephen, where is this white anger coming from? And I had planned on starting to talk about that and not really talking about the reaction of the president. But then he had this press conference yesterday, Nolan, that, I mean, you can laugh about it, but I found it absolutely staggering when you say that there's two sides to white supremacy. When you equate George Washington to Robert E. Lee, it brought up so many various things that I think gives examples to people around the country and spurs thought in directions that I thought that we had put away a long time ago. Yeah. That's where I kind of want to start. And I want to start with you, Stephen, and ask you personally, what have you learned or what has surprised you over the last 3 days of seeing this coverage? And I'm going to ask you the same question, Nolan. I'm going to start with Stephen.
I don't think anything's been surprising. I mean, we've known who Donald Trump was for 30 years, and he's been this guy, right? I mean, this is the guy who, when the Central Park 5 issue was around, took out a full page in the New York Times calling for the death penalty to return to New York to kill these 5 black kids who, as it turned out, were completely innocent. Never did anything that they were accused of, spent all kinds of time in jail, and then were later acquitted. This is somebody who practiced housing discrimination, not once, but twice, got caught doing it, and did it again. I mean, this is somebody who has played into, has coddled, has never stood up to racism and bigotry in his life. So the idea that his reaction to Charlottesville is surprising people is what is, I guess, surprising. I mean, this is who he is. We've known that. I don't know why people expect anything different at this.
Nolan.
So week after week, same thing. Here we are again talking about Donald Trump and what he got wrong, what he didn't do, what he did do, when we should be talking about the issue here is examining how serious a threat is this white supremacist movement and what are we going to do about it. We should be talking about infrastructure this week. We should be talking about a lot of things, but we're sitting here again talking about Donald Trump. And, you know, those of us who didn't support Trump, those conservatives who didn't support Trump, but had hope that he would pivot after the election and become a vehicle for enacting a conservative agenda and getting some of the reforms we had pushed for and wanted. You know, the frustration is tremendous, and you get to the point now where you wonder, is this presidency salvageable? And I don't know how you save this. I mean, we keep thinking, oh, bring John Kelly. You saw John Kelly standing at that press conference yesterday with his head down.
And he shook his head a number of times.
He won't be here long. He's too good a man.
But this is part of the problem.
We keep waiting for, you know, some lightning to strike to move beyond Donald Trump and his personality.
But this is part of the problem.
And he sets the tone and the message that he delivers. So that's why we have to continue talking about it and how he reacts.
So Faust didn't make a bargain as dark as conservatives did with the idea of Trump. I mean, come on.
Some conservatives.
This is unconscionable.
So you're looking for more members of the Republican Party to what? Come up and say, I support my Republican agenda, but I can't work with this man and he should go?
Right. Well, I mean, listen, this is somebody who, A, is unable to even suppress these instincts that he has to focus on the agenda that conservatives want. I mean, he's shown from the beginning an inability to do that. But even if you could get that, let's say that you could get the tax package that you want out of Donald Trump. Let's say you could get the foreign policy that you want out of Donald Trump. The idea that saying it's okay that he's a racist, that he's surrounded himself with racists, and that he will embolden racism and white supremacy across the country and somehow that's okay. Again,
Nobody's saying that's okay.
Well,
he was universally condemned by every Republican you can
not
find
for
this
this
week.
stuff.
And I think, I think sort of trying to extrapolate the blame for Donald Trump across all conservatives, all Republicans is extraordinarily unfair. There's a lot of people distressed. Before the election, I said at the Detroit News, this man is not a conservative. After the election, we said, this man's not a conservative.
But he'll give us what we want.
Today, we said, this man's not a conservative. But we were left with little other choice after he was elected, except try to make the best of it. I mean, I think everybody's working to try to make something work because he is president. And you can't sit down right now and say, well, we don't like him, so,
Let me ask,
about we're done with it?
let me put this out there.
What does
hang
that
on,
mean?
Hang on. What do you mean?
Well,
what does what mean?
So I don't think it's conscionable to serve in this administration. I don't think it's conscionable to work with this administration at this point. I mean, this is an administration whose primary focus at this point, whose primary claim to success at this point, is emboldening white supremacy and fascism. Right? I mean, they haven't gotten anything else done. So what's the idea?
I wouldn't assume
mean,
these
what's the
people feel like
upside?
they're serving
What
Donald
is the
Trump
upside?
or serving this administration. I think a lot of people feel they're serving the country. And to sit there and say, well, let's just
Can you
all
serve
sit
the
down
country when
and
you
let's
serve
just
at the
all
knee
sit down?
of
I
a
think
guy who believes
I
and
think
does
you
the
have
things
to
he
try
says?
because
I don't
he's
know.
there.
I
And we
wouldn't.
can't all sit down and say, okay, we don't like him, so we're not going to do
So let me jump in here for a second. Nolan, let me jump in here for a second and say, okay, so if you want every advisor, you want people who work for him to bow out. What are you left with?
And then
Well, I mean, we have a constitution that says what you're left with. I think you should be having conversations at this point about the 25th Amendment and what it means. We haven't had that conversation ever in the history of this country because we haven't had to. But this is clearly a president who's not got a real grasp on reality, is unable to focus. Why is that true? Is there something wrong with him that prevents him from doing that? I don't know. But we are in a space that we've never been in modern America. I mean, certainly there were much more racist presidents in history than Donald Trump, but certainly post-slavery, post-Jim Crow, we haven't seen anything like this. This is a serious issue and a problem.
I think there's a lot of people who agree with you on the other side of the
There
aisle.
are. They got to do something
Who
now.
worry about the impact of that and what it would do in terms of rending this country in half or tearing it apart. This is, as you said, this is a place we've never been, and we don't know what the consequence of doing something like that.
I'll tell you what the consequence of doing nothing
would it really be tearing it in half or a 30%
just don't know.
versus
who supports
70%
this guy?
at this point?
Right? Who supports him?
Well, you talk about the 30 and 35%. That's his approval rating. His approval rating when he got elected wasn't much higher than that. I mean, he never topped the low 40s.
So this is my next kind of question.
He didn't get elected.
Kind of.
He was selected through the process that we have.
Constitutional process.
He was through a constitutional
So he
process that
was
has nothing to
elected.
do
Correct.
with the popular vote.
He was elected by our process like every other president.
So on
since the beginning,
Tuesday,
yes.
when he gave this press conference, and people across the board, from journalists, from supporters, from Republicans in Congress, said this was off the charts, ridiculous, and you had David Duke go online and say, "Thanks, Mr. President, for
Celebrate,
saying
right.
this is great. Thanks for defending us." The concern now is, does this stance coming out of the White House embolden white nationalists,
course it
supremacists,
does.
Nazis to say, maybe more people can come to our cause, that
That's
we should be
why
a more vocal part of society? And where does this come from,
So-
Nolan? I'm going to start with you on this.
I
Nolan.
would hope not. I mean, I again, would urge us to keep things, in some sort of perspective. These white supremacists recruited people from all over the country to come to this rally, and a couple of hundred showed up. I mean, I don't think this is a huge movement, but we know it's a dangerous movement. We saw that in Oklahoma City, what the outcome of this should be. I thought the president should stand up there, not only denounce it, but say what you're going to do about it. He should have said, we're going to direct Jeff Sessions to do what we did after Oklahoma City, and that is infiltrate these groups and scatter them. I mean, we put them on the run. after Oklahoma City, and then we forgot about them.
Well,
and
Jeff
you know, I'm
Sessions
not
is
sure they're
busy.
any bigger than they have been. And I think you've got to do what you've always done: treat them like a domestic terrorism group, infiltrate their ranks, you know, make them uncertain about what.
Well,
they
I think if you
face.
look at social media, that
Prosecute
they're
them for
emboldened
their-
now.
So, but here's again-
prosecute them for their. I'm
Here
not saying
again-
they're not emboldened. I don't think they're any larger. They've always been with us.
But let's talk about
I
the
think you
fantasy that's
prosecute
involved
them.
here. Come on. Jeff Sessions is busy doing what? He is busy talking about going after colleges for pursuing affirmative action, for diversifying their campuses. He's pulled back from the consent agreements that stop police from the kind of racial dragnetting and unbelievable violence that we saw unfold in places like Ferguson and Baltimore. This is not an administration that's interested in racial justice in any way. And so the idea that he would say to Jeff Sessions, hey,
Say
get
what
after
he
these
might
groups.
or might not do.
He
I
won't
said
do
what
it.
he should do.
But the idea that that's a reasonable response to this is beginning to be more than just folly.
It's the proper
abdication.
response. It's
The
to
proper
turn the
response is
Justice
that he's
Department
probably got
loose
to go.
And the FBI agent.
Well,
Okay, and that's fine to sit here, but you figure out how he can go.
I think that's the
without
Republican
tearing
response.
this-
Republicans control the government. It's their responsibility.
Okay, I want to read you something that the Washington Post Ed Board wrote. They wrote, that car did not kill or wound just 20 bodies it struck. It damaged the nation. Mr. Trump not only failed to help the country heal, he made the wound wider and deeper. You wrote, Stephen, this week that you feel that we are going into a dark place. And I know I've had a lot of conversations with people over the last couple of days that feel that same way or sense that. What is your sense, Nolan?
I think that Donald Trump had a responsibility after the election to start putting the country back together. You know, I think a lot of folks hoped that what they saw on the campaign trail was just showmanship and that's what he was going to do to get elected, but that's not who he would be as president. And he's been worse since he's been president. You know, he hasn't focused on his business. I do think he is fueling the divisions in this country. You know, I think we're beyond, I agree that the Democratic resistance has been despicable, that he's been treated unfairly at times in the press, but he has been his own worst enemy, and he has damaged the country. He continues to damage the country, and you know, I think it's a great frustration.
Are we at some kind of breaking point or turning point in your mind, Stephen?
Oh, I think we are. I think we're going to start to see, I mean...
Because for a lot of people, a breaking point for Donald Trump was when there was a video released that he said that he could grab women by their private parts, you know, months and months and months
ago.
ago.
For me, I mean, for me, it was 30 years ago with this guy, right? This has never been an acceptable human being in terms of these issues, women, I mean, all kinds of stuff. But I do think what you're going to see, you know, the right now is consumed with saying, well, you know, just like Nolan just said, Democrats have been despicable too.
They have been.
Can you give me an example of here's what would be despicable.
I think it's despicable to say we are not going to.
Well, here's what I'll give you an example.
To work for the good of the country.
Well, I'll tell
That's
you what
they've said.
But there's a real difference between, and this is what is lost on white America. This is certainly what's lost on right America. You don't get to choose the means by which someone you're oppressing pushes back. The idea that we get to say...
I don't think Democrats are an oppressed
Well,
group.
I'm talking about African Americans.
Well, you switched subjects here. I was talking about Democrats.
Okay.
You pointed at me and said what you just said. I was talking about this
well, let's talk
idea
about
that
despicable.
we don't have to act on behalf of the
killing
country.
Republicans
we don't have to
at
do
rallies?
our job. Are Democrats killing Republicans?
Are Democrats
what
killing
happened
Republicans?
in Virginia?
What happened in Virginia?
What happened in Virginia where you had this Bernie Sanders supporter shoot Congress people? People have lost their minds here. And when you talk about the responsibility of Democrats to the country,
I guess what I'm trying to do is put this in some systematic context.
to make things work.
I'm trying to put this in some systematic context, right? There is no systematic effort to oppress conservatives or white people or Republicans in this country.
Or Democrats.
But there are systematic oppression. There is systematic oppression for large constituencies of the Democratic Party.
And that's not exactly
but hold on, let me finish.
Let me finish.
I think what we're going to see is what that response might look like. So, for instance, Kid Rock is opening the new arena downtown. What if I got 700 black men together to go down and demonstrate at that with torches? You think I'd get a permit for that? The way they did in Virginia, you think that'd be seen as a peaceful march?
I'm not saying that they should have gotten the permits.
My point is,
I don't know where you're going or what the hell you're talking about.
My point is that the escalation on one side, I think, opens the door to escalation on the other side.
Okay, I'm going to hang on. Before you respond, I'm going to bridge something because it's something that you wrote actually this week, and what you're saying right now is a line that you wrote saying, but a group of torch-bearing white men can assemble in march and chant racist slogans, and it's seen as a protest, not a riot. So I think you're talking about what the perception.
The people who issued the permits saw it as a protest.
Well, blame them.
It's free speech somehow.
Blame this democratic city that issued the permits. I think that has been widely condemned across the board.
Well, okay. I guess my point is, historically, we have never.
I'm going to let you wrap up.
We have never seen African Americans behave the way we have seen whites and conservatives behave in oppression.
You can no more blame all whites for what happened in Charlottesville than you can blame all Muslims.
You can't blame them for that.
Right?
But the question is, white people control the country, Republicans control the government. What are they going to do?
That city was controlled by Democrats.
What are you going to do?
They issued the permits. Why did they do it?
Well, what are the people who are in charge going to do now?
They were in charge.
Well, all right. You know what?
And I said what they think they should do. I think we should do what we did after Oklahoma City and bust these groups up, put them on the run.
Okay, Nolan, I'm going to let you take a moment. Give me just in terms of how we move forward through the rest of this week. I'm going to give you an opportunity to wrap up. Stephen, I will give you the same.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how we move forward from here at all. I mean, I think we've reached as Steve said, a point we've never seen in this country. And I think it doesn't help that we seem unable in this country to have, even amongst ourselves, put Trump aside, any sort of civil discussions. And I mean, I think everybody agrees that white supremacy and racism is bad. And I think now sitting here in the face of this, trying to point fingers at each other is not helpful. I mean, we all agree. There's no constituency for racism. That's what makes where Donald Trump is standing so curious. Who does he think he appeasing? These people didn't elect him.
The constituency
They're too small a group. And to say that you know it's some wide group of conservatives or wide group of white people, it's just not true.
Okay, now this is the last word on this.
The
Stephen.
constituency is not all racist. The constituency is racist and the people who cover for them. It's the people who don't stand up and say, that's not going to go on. It's the people who hold on,
Nolan.
Well, the Republican Congress won't stop this president from doing the things that he's doing. They have never done it, and they're sitting back saying, we hope that this president will help us enact our agenda, and they are willing to trade everybody else.
He has not had any Republican support.
All right, guys, we're going to have to.
What's he been able to get done in Congress?
We're going to have to leave it there. I gave you both an opportunity for a last word. We're going to try to make it as fair as possible here.